The red ships came like death itself, cutting through space with silent menace. Admiral Kyle stood on the bridge of his massive warship, watching the screens that showed another world about to fall. This was how it always happened. The Veltharian Empire would arrive, show their power, and demand surrender. No one ever said no twice. "Target the largest city," Kale commanded, his voice cold as winter. The weapon charged with a sound like thunder rolling across the heavens. Below on the planet, millions of beings looked up at the sky, knowing their time had come. The beam of pure energy struck the planet's surface. Where once a great city had stood, now there was only glass and ash. The message was clear: surrender or die. "They are sending a signal," reported one of his officers. "They surrender completely." Kale nodded. It was always the same. Show them what the Empire could do, and they gave up without a fight. In 3 days, this world would be another jewel in the Veltharian crown. The beings here would work in the mines, build ships for the fleet, and serve the Empire until they died. This was the 17th world to fall in the past 10 years. Kale had been there for all of them. He was the Empire's greatest weapon, the admiral who had never lost a battle. His ship, the Dominion's Fist, was the largest warship ever built. It could destroy entire fleets with a single shot. The Veltharians were proud of their empire. They had built it with superior technology and unbreakable unity. Every Veltharian was connected to every other through their shared mind. They thought as one, acted as one, and conquered as one. No enemy had ever found a way to defeat them. Far across the galaxy, on a small blue planet called Earth, Captain Dae-Ho Kim walked the halls of humanity's newest warship. The Soul's Vengeance was not much to look at compared to the great ships of other species. It was small, built from steel and determination rather than exotic materials. But it was humanity's first real step into the deep unknown of space. Dae-Ho had been chosen to command this mission because he was careful and smart. He studied old battles from Earth's history, reading about generals who had won against impossible odds. His favorite was a man named Sun Tzu, who had written that the best victory was won without fighting. Dae-Ho hoped he would never have to test that wisdom. His crew was small but skilled. Engineer Boram Lee could fix anything with spare parts and creativity. Tactical officer Tai-Jun Park had trained on every weapon system humans had ever built. Communications officer Hye-Jin Choi could speak 7 languages and learn new ones in days. Medical officer Sang-Woo Han had saved more lives than any doctor in the fleet. They were on patrol near the edge of human space when the call came. Kepler 442b was a mining station on a lonely rock of a planet. It was home to 3,000 people who dug rare metals from the ground and sent them back to Earth. The message was short and desperate. "This is Kepler Station. We are under attack. Unknown ships. They are demanding surrender. We need help. Please, someone help us." Then the signal went dead. Dae-Ho stared at the empty screen for a long moment. Kepler 442b was 2 days away at our full speed. By the time they arrived, whatever had happened would be over. But those were human lives out there. His duty was clear. "Set course for Kepler 442b, he ordered. "Maximum speed." Boram looked up from her engineering station. "Captain, we don't know what we're flying into. Could be pirates, could be worse. No," Dae-Ho said. "But we can't leave them." The Soul's Vengeance jumped to faster than light speed, racing through the void toward whatever awaited them. For 2 days they traveled in silence, each crew member lost in their own thoughts. They all knew this could be their first real test. When they dropped back into normal space near Kepler 442b, they found hell waiting for them. The mining station was gone. Where it had once orbited the planet, there was now only twisted metal and frozen bodies floating in the dark. The planet's surface glowed with heat where something terrible had struck it. The 3,000 people who had called for help were dead, but they were not alone. 3 massive ships hung in space near the dead world. They were unlike anything in human records. Red as blood and smooth as glass, they looked like they had been grown rather than built. Each one was 10 times the size of the Soul's Vengeance. "Captain," Hye-Jin whispered, her voice tight with fear. I'm picking up transmissions from those ships. They're not using any language in our database. Before Daeho could respond, the alien ships turned toward them. Moving with perfect coordination, they formed a triangle around the human vessel. Then a new voice came over the communications system, speaking perfect English. Unknown vessel, you are now property of the Veltharian Empire. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your immediate destruction. On the screen, one of the red ships grew larger as it approached. Weapons that crackled with energy pointed directly at the soul's vengeance. The message was clear: surrender or die, just like the mining station. Daeho felt his heart hammering in his chest. These aliens had just murdered 3,000 innocent people. They had destroyed an entire world, and now they expected him to simply give up his ship and crew. "Captain," Taejun said quietly, "our weapons are nothing compared to what they're packing. Those energy readings are off the charts." "Life signs on the ships?" Daeho asked. Sang-woo checked his scanners. "Thousands on each ship, but the readings are strange. It's like they're all connected somehow." The alien voice came again, colder this time. "You have 10 seconds to comply. 10, 9, 8. Bo-Ram's hands flew over her controls. "Engines at full power, Captain. We can run if you want." 7, 6, 5. Daeho looked at his crew. They were scared, but they trusted him. They would follow whatever order he gave, even if it meant death. These were good people, the best humanity had to offer. They didn't deserve to die out here in the dark. But then he thought about the 3,000 voices that had called for help, the families who would never see their loved ones again, the children who had died while these monsters watched. 4, 3, 2. "All hands, battle stations," Daeho commanded. "We fight." The Soul's Vengeance powered up its weapons and turned to face the alien fleet. It was one small ship against 3 giants, but Daeho had read his history. Sometimes David beat Goliath. The red ships opened fire. Energy beams bright as stars lashed out at the human vessel. Bo-Ram threw the ship into a wild spiral, using every bit of power the engines could give. The beams missed by meters, close enough that the hull groaned from the heat. "Return fire!" Daeho shouted. Taejun triggered their missiles and railguns. The weapons streaked across space toward the alien ships. For a moment, hope flared in the human hearts as they watched their attack close the distance. Then the missiles simply vanished. The railgun rounds bounced off the alien hulls like raindrops. The red ships didn't even slow down. "Impossible," Taejun breathed. "Nothing can stop a railgun round." The aliens fired again. This time Bo-Ram couldn't dodge fast enough. The beam caught the Soul's Vengeance along the side, tearing through armor like paper. Alarm screamed as atmosphere rushed out into space. "Hull breach on decks 4 and 5, Sang-woo reported. "Emergency force fields are holding, but barely." Another beam missed them by centimeters, then another. The aliens were toying with them like cats playing with a mouse. They could have destroyed the human ship any time they wanted. The alien voice returned, amused now. "Your weapons cannot harm us, your defenses cannot stop us. This is your final chance to surrender." Daeho gripped his command chair as the ship shuddered under another near miss. His crew looked to him for answers he didn't have. These aliens were beyond anything humanity had imagined. Their technology was like magic, but as he watched the red ships maneuver with perfect coordination, something clicked in his mind. Perfect coordination. They moved like one mind in 3 bodies. That was their strength. Maybe it was also their weakness. "Heejin," he said, "can you jam their communications?" "I can try, but their signals are unlike anything I've seen." "Do it. Full jamming on all frequencies." As Heejin worked, Daeho studied the enemy formation. They moved together, turned together, fired together, like dancers following the same music. But what if the music stopped? "Jamming activated," Heejin announced. For just a moment, the red ships hesitated. Their perfect formation wavered. One ship started to turn left while another went right. It only lasted seconds before they recovered, but it was enough. "There," Daeho said, pointing at the screen. "They're connected. break the connection, break their coordination. It wasn't much of an advantage against such overwhelming power, but it was something. And sometimes something was all David needed. The red ships recovered from the jamming attack faster than Daeho had hoped. Within seconds, they were moving in perfect formation again, their weapons charging for another strike. But those few moments of confusion had given him something precious: hope. "Captain," Boram called from her station, "I'm reading massive energy buildup from all three ships. They're going to hit us with everything." Daeho watched the enemy vessels position themselves around his ship. The Soul's vengeance was trapped, surrounded by enemies that could destroy it with a single shot. His crew waited for orders that might be their last. "All power to rear shields," he commanded. "Prepare for emergency acceleration." The alien ships fired as one, 3 beams of destruction converging on the human vessel. But at the last second, Boram triggered the emergency boost. The Soul's vengeance shot forward like a bullet, the energy beams passing harmlessly through the space where it had been. "Excellent flying," Taejun said with relief. "But we can't keep dodging forever." He was right. The aliens had more firepower, better shields, and perfect coordination. Every shot they missed was just luck, and luck never lasted long in space battles. "Sang-woo," Daeho said, "scan those ships again. I want to know everything about their defenses." The medical officer worked his scanners, studying the alien vessels with scientific precision. "Their shields are definitely energy-based, Captain. They absorb our missile explosions and deflect our energy weapons completely. But there's something strange about the way they work." "Strange how?" "They seem designed only for energy absorption. Like they've never had to deal with anything else." An idea began forming in Daeho's mind. He thought about human history, about the weapons his species had used before they reached the stars. "Taejun, what kinetic weapons do we have on board?" "Kinetic?" The tactical officer looked confused. "Just the railguns, but those didn't work. Their hulls are too strong." "No, I mean really kinetic. Old-fashioned projectiles. Metal hitting metal." Taejun checked his weapons inventory. "We have some armor-piercing rounds for boarding actions, and there are emergency harpoons in case we need to attach to another ship. But Captain, those are practically ancient technology." "Sometimes ancient technology is exactly what you need." The Soul's vengeance rolled and twisted as another energy beam passed close enough to melt part of the hull. They were running out of time and space to maneuver. The aliens were herding them like sheep, cutting off escape routes with each attack. "Boram, can you modify our missile launchers to fire solid projectiles?" The engineer's eyes lit up with understanding. "If their shields only work on energy weapons..." "Captain, you're brilliant. Give me 5 minutes." They didn't have 5 minutes. The red ships were closing in, their weapons charging again. But Boram worked with desperate speed, rerouting power systems and modifying launch tubes with her bare hands. "Heejin," Daeho said, "see if you can understand their language. I want to know what they're thinking." The communications officer had been listening to alien transmissions since the battle began. "It's complex, but I'm starting to pick up patterns. They seem to be discussing us like we're some kind of curiosity." "What do you mean?" "From what I can understand, they're calling our weapons primitive and harmless. They think we're using obsolete technology." Another energy beam grazed their shields, overloading systems throughout the ship. Sparks flew from control panels as the lights flickered. They couldn't take many more hits like that. "Got it," Boram announced. "Missile tubes are modified. Loading. Solid tungsten rods now. Fire when ready," Daeho ordered. The Soul's vengeance launched 6 metal rods at the nearest alien ship. They were simple pieces of tungsten, sharp and dense, traveling at incredible speed. No explosives, no energy signatures, just mass and velocity. The alien shields, designed to stop energy weapons, did nothing to slow them down. 5 rods struck, the red hull with tremendous force, punching through armor that had seemed invincible moments before. The 6th rod hit something vital. Lights flickered across the alien ship as systems failed. For the first time since the battle began, the humans had drawn blood. "Impossible," came a new voice over the communication system. This one sounded different from the others, shocked, angry. How did your primitive weapons penetrate our defenses? Hyojin was translating frantically. Captain, they're in complete confusion. They're calling it an anomaly and demanding explanations from each other. The wounded alien ship pulled back, its perfect formation broken. The other two vessels moved to protect it, but their coordination was shaky. They had never faced an enemy that could hurt them. Load more kinetic rounds, Daeho ordered. All tubes. But the aliens weren't stupid. They learned fast, adjusting their tactics to avoid the metal projectiles. They began firing from longer range, using their superior firepower to keep the human ship at bay. We need more than just tungsten rods, Taejun said. They're adapting. Sang-woo had an idea. Captain, the emergency supplies include nuclear charges for asteroid mining. They're designed to break up large rocks, but they'd work just fine on alien ships. Daeho finished. Do it. The medical officer left his station and ran through the ship's corridors, dodging falling debris from the latest energy strike. He reached the cargo hold where the mining charges were stored. Small nuclear devices meant for peaceful purposes, now humanity's best hope for survival. Meanwhile, Heejin continued listening to alien communications. They're calling for reinforcements, Captain, and they're reporting something called a Type 7 threat. What's a Type 7 threat? I don't know, but they seem very concerned about it. The Soul's Vengeance fired another volley of kinetic rounds while the aliens were distracted. This time they were ready, moving their ships to avoid the projectiles. But one rod still found its mark, tearing through the hull of a second vessel. Now 2 of the 3 red ships were damaged, their crews struggling to understand how primitive kinetic weapons could threaten their advanced technology. The third ship moved to protect its wounded companions, but its position left it exposed. Sang-woo returned with the nuclear mining charges. These need to be modified for combat use, he said, handing them to Boram. The engineer worked with practiced skill, turning tools of construction into weapons of war. These will pack more punch than our regular missiles, but they're still nuclear explosions. Their energy shields should stop them. Not if we get them close enough first, Daeho said. He had another idea, one that came from studying ancient Earth naval battles. We're going to ram them. His crew stared at him. Ramming was suicide against ships that size. Not directly, he explained. We get close, launch the charges at point-blank range, then get out. At that distance, their shields won't have time to absorb all the energy. It was insane. It was desperate. It was exactly the kind of plan that sometimes worked when nothing else would. The Soul's Vengeance accelerated toward the nearest alien ship, dodging energy beams that grew more accurate as the range decreased. Alarms screamed as hull temperature rose from near misses. One beam actually clipped their starboard engine, sending the ship into a spin that Boram barely controlled. 500 meters, Taejun announced. 400. 300. The alien ship was huge, filling their view screen like a red metal mountain. Its weapons swiveled to track them, but at this close range even the aliens couldn't fire without risking damage to themselves. 200 meters. 150. Fire! Daeho commanded. The modified nuclear charges launched at point-blank range, covering the distance to the alien hull in less than a second. The red ship's shields flared as they tried to absorb the nuclear explosions, but there was too much energy too close to their hull. The shields failed. Fire bloomed along the alien ship's surface as the nuclear charges detonated against bare armor. Atmosphere vented into space through dozens of holes. The great vessel shuddered and began to list to one side, its engines flickering. Got them! Taejun shouted. Direct hit! But their celebration was short-lived. The other 2 alien ships, even damaged, were moving to surround them again. And from their communications, more ships were on the way. Captain, Hyojin said urgently, I'm picking up a distress signal, human signal. On the scanner, small objects were moving away from the destroyed mining station. Escape pods, survivors from Kepler 442b who had somehow stayed hidden during the alien attack. How many? Daeho asked. 15 pods, maybe 40 people total. The alien ships were closing in for the kill, their weapons charging. The Soul's Vengeance was damaged, low on ammunition, and outnumbered. The smart thing to do was run, try to escape while they still could. But 40 people were counting on them. "We get the survivors," Daeho said. "All of them." His crew didn't argue. They knew the risks, but they also knew their duty. The Soul's Vengeance limped toward the escape pods while energy beams lit up space around them. "Survivors aboard," Sang-Woo reported as the last pod was recovered. "But Captain, one of them is asking to speak with you. Says he's an engineer who knows something about these aliens." The man who stumbled onto the bridge was covered in soot and blood, but his eyes burned with fierce intelligence. "Min Ho-yoon," he said, extending a shaking hand. "I was the station's chief engineer. I saw what those red ships can do." "We've seen it too." 3 weeks had passed since the battle at Kepler 442b, and the Soul's Vengeance had become a ghost ship. Captain Dae-ho Kim sat in his command chair, studying star charts that showed Veltharian patrol routes. His ship hid in the shadow of a dead asteroid, systems running silent, waiting. "Contact," whispered Hee-jin from her station. "2 Veltharian ships approaching from Sector 7. The red vessels moved through space like hunting sharks, their sensors sweeping for any sign of the human ship that had dared to hurt them. "Admiral." Kale had sent dozens of patrols searching for the Soul's Vengeance, but they always looked in the wrong places. Daeho had learned much in these 3 weeks. He studied the enemy like his ancestors had once studied wild animals, learning their patterns and habits. The Veltharians were predictable because they thought as one mind. They couldn't imagine tactics they had never used themselves. "Range?" he asked quietly. 2,000 kilometers and closing, Tae-jun reported. "Still haven't seen us." Min Ho-yoon worked beside Bo-ram at the engineering station, his hands covered in grease and determination. The mining engineer had become their secret weapon, his knowledge of industrial equipment helping them turn asteroids into ammunition. "Projectiles ready, Captain," Bo-ram announced. "Tungsten rods with nuclear charges attached. Should punch right through their hulls." The Veltharian ships passed within 500 kilometers of their hiding spot, sensors active but finding nothing. The Soul's Vengeance was powered down to minimal systems, looking like just another piece of space debris. "Wait for it," Daeho whispered. The alien ships continued their patrol, moving in perfect synchronization. They had searched this asteroid field before and found nothing. Their shared mind was already dismissing this area as clear. Now, the Soul's Vengeance erupted from its hiding place like a predator striking. Full power to engines and weapons, the human ship accelerated toward the surprised Veltharians. Before they could react, tungsten rods were already flying through space. The first alien ship took 3 direct hits. Nuclear fire bloomed along its hull as armor plating vaporized. The second ship tried to turn, but kinetic projectiles moved faster than thought. 2 more explosions lit up the darkness. Both ships heavily damaged, Tae-jun reported with satisfaction. "They're falling back." But Daeho wasn't finished. "Follow them. Stay close. Don't let them call for help." This was the new way of fighting. The Veltharians. Hit fast, hit hard, and disappear before reinforcements could arrive. The aliens were used to enemies who stood and fought like gentlemen. They didn't understand guerrilla warfare. The Soul's Vengeance pursued the damaged ships through the asteroid field, picking them apart with careful shots. Every projectile was precious. They couldn't waste ammunition on missed shots. "Hull breach. On the lead ship," Sang-Woo observed from his medical station. "They're venting atmosphere." "Good. Hee-jin, are you recording their communications?" The communications officer nodded. "Every word, Captain. They're reporting the attack, but their transmission is getting jammed by asteroid interference. That was the key to this new strategy. Fight them where their advanced communications couldn't reach their fleet. Make them isolated and afraid." The first Veltharian ship exploded as its power core overloaded. The second tried to escape, but a final tungsten rod caught it in the engine section. Dead in space, the alien vessel could only watch as the Soul's Vengeance approached. "Boarding party ready, Captain," Tae-jun announced. This was the most dangerous part, getting aboard an enemy ship to steal their technology and learn their secrets. But it was also necessary. Every piece of Veltharian equipment they captured brought them closer to understanding how to defeat the Empire. Daeho led the boarding party himself, wearing a bulky spacesuit and carrying a kinetic rifle. The Veltharian ship's hull was still hot from nuclear impacts, but their cutting tools made quick work of the armor. Inside, the alien vessel was unlike anything human. Everything was smooth and curved, glowing with soft red light. There were no individual controls or stations. The ship was designed for minds that shared thoughts and decisions. They found survivors in the ship's center, tall beings with gray skin and large black eyes. The Veltharians looked at the humans, with confusion and fear. They had never seen their conquerors face to face. Sang-Woo, take samples of their equipment, Daeho ordered. Hye-jin, try to access their communication systems. I want to know what they're telling their fleet. The medical officer collected alien technology while Hye-jin worked at a strange control panel that responded to touch and thought. The Veltharians watched helplessly as their ship's secrets were stolen. Captain, Hye-jin said excitedly, I'm reading massive data flows. Their ships share everything, sensor data, tactical plans, even individual thoughts. It's like they're all parts of one giant computer. Can you interfere with it? Maybe, but I'll need time to understand their protocols. They didn't have time. Through the ship's hull, Daeho could hear the sound of approaching engines. More Veltharian vessels were coming, drawn by the distress signals. Everyone back to our ship, he commanded. We've learned what we can. The Soul's Vengeance detached from the alien vessel and slipped back into the asteroid field. Behind them, 3 more red ships arrived to find their comrades dead or dying. The humans watched from hiding as the aliens searched the area in growing frustration. They're learning to be afraid, Minho observed with grim satisfaction. Good. Back in their hidden base, a hollowed-out asteroid equipped with repair facilities. The crew studied what they had learned. Sang-Woo worked with captured Veltharian equipment while Hye-jin analyzed their communication systems. Their network is incredibly complex, she explained to the gathered officers. Every ship, every station, every individual Veltharian is connected. They share thoughts, memories, even emotions. That's their strength, Daeho said. Perfect coordination and shared knowledge. It's also their weakness, Sang-Woo added. They can't think as individuals. When something unexpected happens, they have to process it through their entire collective mind. It takes time. Boram held up a strange device she had taken from the Veltharian ship. This is some kind of neural interface. They plug this into their skulls to connect to their network. Can we interfere with it? Taejun asked. I'm working on it, Hye-jin said. But their security is unlike anything I've seen. It's not just computer code. It's mental patterns and thought processes. While his technical team worked on the Veltharian network, Daeho planned their next attack. The aliens had increased their patrols, but they still followed predictable patterns. They couldn't imagine an enemy that refused to fight fair. Here, he said, pointing to a star system on the tactical display. 3 Veltharian supply ships escorted by 2 warships. They're carrying resources from newly conquered worlds. Long way from their main fleet, Taejun observed. Exactly. We hit them, take what we can use, and vanish before they can respond. But this attack would be different. Hye-jin had made a breakthrough in understanding Veltharian communications. She couldn't break their network yet, but she could listen to it, translating their shared thoughts into human language. Captain, she said during the mission briefing, I've been monitoring their network traffic. They're calling us the ghost ship now. They know we're out here, but they can't predict where we'll strike next. Good, Daeho replied. Fear is a weapon too. The attack on the supply convoy went perfectly. The Soul's Vengeance struck from behind a moon, launching kinetic projectiles before the Veltharians knew they were there. The 2 escort ships were crippled in the first moments, their hulls punctured by tungsten rods. The supply ships tried to run, but they were too slow and too big. One by one, they fell to the human ship's guns, but Daeho didn't destroy them. Completely, he wanted their cargo. Boarding parties away, he commanded. The supply ships carried more than just resources. They held prisoners, beings from worlds the Veltharians had conquered, destined for lives of slavery in the Empire's mines and factories. My God, Sang-Woo breathed as they opened the cargo holds. There are thousands of them, different species, different worlds, but all united by suffering under Veltharian rule. They looked at their human rescuers with hope and disbelief. Can we take them with us? Taejun asked. We'll make room, Daeho decided. No one goes back to slavery. Among the freed prisoners was a being called Kresh, from a world that had fallen to the Veltharians 2 years ago. He was a military officer who had fought in his planet's last battle. Your ship, he said to Daeho in broken but understandable English. It destroyed 3 Veltharian vessels. How is this possible? We learned not to fight the way they expect, Daeho replied. Kresh's eyes widened with understanding. You use tactics they do not know. My people tried to fight them ship to ship, weapon to weapon. We lost. Would your people fight again if they had the chance? If we thought we could win? Yes. Every world they have conquered would rise up if they believed victory was possible. This gave Daeho a new idea. The Soul's vengeance was just one ship, but what if it wasn't alone? What if other worlds learned human tactics and joined the fight? Hi, Jin, he said. Start broadcasting on all frequencies. Tell everyone what we've learned about fighting the Veltharians. Share our tactics, our weapons designs, everything. Admiral Kale stood before the great tactical display in his flagship's command center, watching red dots that marked his fleet positions. 50 of the Empire's finest warships now hunted the single human vessel that had dared to challenge Veltharian might. It should have been enough to destroy 100 enemy ships, but the ghost ship continued to elude him. Report, he demanded from his communications officer. Another supply convoy attacked in Sector 12, Admiral. 3 ships destroyed, cargo, taken prisoners freed. The human vessel vanished before reinforcements arrived. Kale's shared mind burned with frustration that echoed through every Veltharian in the fleet. For months, this single enemy ship had struck at them like a phantom, appearing from nowhere, dealing damage and disappearing again. How many ships have we lost to this thing? 37 vessels destroyed or severely damaged, Admiral, but that is not our greatest concern. What do you mean? His officer touched the display, showing communications intercepts from across the galaxy. The human ship is broadcasting tactical information. Other species are learning their methods. Rebellion is spreading. On a dozen worlds, former slaves practiced building kinetic weapons from mining equipment. Species that had accepted Veltharian rule were now attacking patrol ships and supply convoys. The perfect order of the Empire was cracking. Double our patrols, Kale ordered. Triple them if necessary. This rebellion ends now. Meanwhile, the Soul's vengeance drifted silent in the shadow of a gas giant, its crew working with desperate intensity. Captain Daeho Kim watched his people push themselves beyond their limits, knowing that time was running out. Status report, he called. Engineer Boram looked up from her workstation, her face streaked with grease and exhaustion. We've modified every piece of mining equipment we could find. Tungsten rods, nuclear charges, improvised missiles. We're armed like a proper warship now. What about the virus? Daeho asked. Communications officer Hee Jin worked at a jury-rigged computer system built from captured Veltharian technology. I'm close, Captain. I understand how their network functions now. They don't just share information, they share their actual consciousness. Every Veltharian is like a single brain cell in a massive mind. Can you disrupt it? Better than that, I can force them to experience individuality, their worst nightmare. Medical officer Sang-woo had been studying captured Veltharian prisoners for weeks, trying to understand their psychology. Captain, you need to see this. When I isolated one prisoner from the others, cutting off his network connection, something remarkable happened. On his medical display, brain scans showed dramatic changes in Veltharian neural patterns. Without the collective mind, he began to think independently for the first time in his life. He started asking questions, making decisions on his own. Did it hurt him? No, but it terrified him. Individual thought is completely foreign to their species. They've been part of a hive mind for so long they've forgotten how to be alone in their own heads. This gave Daeho an idea that was both brilliant and terrible. If we could force that change on their entire species, it would end their empire instantly, Hyejin finished. They couldn't function as a collective military force anymore. But, is it right? Tactical Officer Taejun asked quietly. Forcing an entire species to change who they are? The question hung in the air like smoke. They all knew the answer, but none wanted to say it. The Veltharians had enslaved entire worlds, murdered billions, and would continue to do so unless they were stopped. Sometimes the only choice was between two terrible options. We'll use it as a last resort, Daiho decided. First, let's try to win this war the regular way. The plan they had been working on for months was ready. Rebel cells throughout Veltharian space would strike simultaneously, drawing enemy forces away from their core systems. Then the Soul's vengeance would lead a small fleet of liberated ships against the Empire's greatest fortress. Incoming transmission, Hyojin announced. From Kresh. The alien military officer they had rescued weeks ago appeared on their screen. His face was grim but determined. Captain Kim, my fleet is ready. 15 ships from 6 different worlds, all armed with your kinetic weapons. Other faces appeared as rebel leaders reported in. A mining station commander with 20 converted cargo ships, a former Veltharian slave who had stolen an enemy vessel, even some Veltharian dissidents who had broken free from the collective mind. Are you sure about this? Daiho asked them. Once we start, there's no going back. The Empire will try to destroy every world that defies them. They're doing that anyway, replied Kresh. At least now we have a chance to fight back. The rebellion began at exactly 800 hours Galactic Standard Time. Across 50 star systems, former slaves and conquered peoples struck at their oppressors. Most attacks were small, a damaged patrol ship here, a destroyed supply depot there. But together, they created chaos throughout Veltharian space. Admiral, Kale watched his perfect empire fracture in real time. Impossible, he breathed as reports flooded in. How are they coordinating this? We control all interstellar communications. His staff worked frantically to respond, but there were too many attacks happening too fast. Every time they sent ships to crush one rebellion, 3 more started elsewhere. Admiral, his communications officer reported, we're detecting a large fleet moving toward the Nexus system. Kale's shared mind focused instantly. The Nexus was one of their most important fortress worlds, heavily defended, but also crucial to maintaining control over their territory. If it fell, a dozen nearby systems might also rebel. How large a fleet? 50 ships, sir. Mixed classes, but all using kinetic weapons. Send everything, Kale commanded. I want 300 ships at Nexus within 6 hours. But that was exactly what Daiho had hoped for. While Veltharian forces rushed to defend their fortress world, the real target lay elsewhere. A lightly defended communication hub that controlled the Empire's entire network. Phase 1 complete, Hyojin reported. They're taking the bait. The Soul's Vengeance and 12 allied ships dropped out of hyperspace near the communication hub. It was protected by only 5 Veltharian warships, their crews confident that no enemy would dare attack such an unimportant target. They were wrong. All ships, attack pattern Delta, Daiho commanded. Hit them fast and hard. The small rebel fleet opened fire with everything they had. Tungsten rods and nuclear charges filled space, overwhelming the surprised Veltharian defenses. Within minutes, all 5 enemy ships were disabled or destroyed. Boarding parties away, Taijun announced. This was the crucial moment. If they could capture the communication hub intact, Hyojin could upload her virus directly into the Veltharian network, but they had to do it before enemy reinforcements arrived. Daiho led the boarding team himself, racing through the strange corridors of the alien facility. Veltharian technicians tried to resist, but they were unprepared for the brutal efficiency of human combat tactics. Here, Hyojin said, stopping at a massive control room filled with pulsing, organic-looking computers. This is their central processing core. She connected her jury-rigged equipment to the alien systems, while Daiho and his team held the entrances. Outside, they could hear the sound of approaching ships, reinforcements arriving faster than expected. How much longer? Daiho asked. 2 minutes, Hyojin replied, sweat beading on her forehead. Maybe 3. Contact, Taijun's voice crackled over the radio. Veltharian ships dropping out of hyperspace, lots of them. Through the facility's windows, Daiho could see red ships appearing in space around them. Admiral Kale himself had come, leading the Empire's most powerful fleet in a desperate attempt to protect their communications network. 1 minute, Hyojin announced. The building shuddered as Veltharian weapons struck its shields. The defensive systems were strong, but they wouldn't last long against such overwhelming firepower. Upload at 70%, Hyojin said. 80%, 90%. Contact inside the facility, Sang-woo called out. Veltharian troops in the lower levels. Enemy soldiers were storming through the building, racing to stop the virus upload. Daeho and his team fell back toward the control room, fighting a desperate delaying action. Upload complete, Hyojin shouted. But even as she disconnected her equipment, Daeho knew they might be too late. The virus would take time to spread through the Veltharian network, and they were trapped in a facility surrounded by enemy ships. All teams fall back to the landing craft, he ordered. They fought their way through corridors filled with smoke and sparks, Veltharian troops pressing them at every step. Sang-woo fell with an energy burn across his shoulder, but refused to be left behind. Minho carried him while the others provided covering fire. Their landing craft took off just as the facility's shields failed completely. Veltharian weapons tore through the building, turning it into a blazing ruin. But it was too late. The virus was already spreading. Back aboard the Soul's Vengeance, they watched as something unprecedented happened. Across the Veltharian fleet, ships began to lose coordination. Some vessels stopped responding to orders. Others started moving in random directions. It's working, Hyojin breathed. The virus is forcing individual consciousness on their crews. Admiral Kale felt his perfect unity beginning to crack. 6 months after the virus spread through the Veltharian network, the galaxy had become a very different place. Captain Daeho Kim stood on the bridge of the Soul's Vengeance, looking at a tactical display that showed the final battle approaching. The Veltharian capital system lay ahead, defended by the last forces loyal to the old empire. Status report, he called to his crew. Allied fleet holding position, Tactical Officer Tae-jun reported. 200 ships from 40 different worlds. They're ready for your signal, Captain. The rebel fleet was a strange mixture of vessels, converted cargo ships, captured Veltharian warships, and purpose-built fighters armed with human kinetic weapons. It was the largest alliance the galaxy had ever seen, united by their shared hatred of the Empire and their respect for the small human ship that had shown them how to fight back. What about our special cargo? Daeho asked. Engineer Boram checked her instruments. The enhanced virus is ready for deployment, but Captain, once we release it into their core network, there's no going back. Every Veltharian in the galaxy will be forced into individual consciousness. It was the weapon they had hoped never to use. The original virus had already freed millions of Veltharians from their collective mind, but many had chosen to remain, connected to isolated networks. This new version would cut every mental link permanently, transforming an entire species whether they wanted it or not. Any word from the peace negotiators? Daeho asked Communications Officer Hyojin. She shook, her head sadly. Emperor Vex refuses all attempts at surrender. He says he would rather see his species die than live as individuals. That was the tragedy of this war. Not all Veltharians supported the Empire's actions, but their collective mind made it impossible for them to rebel individually. Those who had been freed by the virus were often grateful, but the process was traumatic and irreversible. Medical Officer Sang-woo looked up from his station, where he had been monitoring reports from across the galaxy. Captain, the freed Veltharian colonies are reporting positive developments. They're learning to govern themselves, make individual choices. Some are even asking to join our alliance. Any problems? Some psychological trauma from the transition, but nothing that can't be treated. Dr. Kresh thinks they'll adapt within a generation. Former Admiral Kale, now calling himself simply Kale, had become one of their most valuable allies. The experience of individual thought had changed him completely, transforming him from a ruthless conqueror into a fierce defender of freedom. His knowledge of Veltharian tactics and technology had been crucial in planning this final assault. Incoming transmission, Hyojin announced. It's Kale. The former enemy admiral appeared on their screen, his red skin marked with scars from battles against his own former fleet. Captain Kim, my scout ships report that Emperor Vex has concentrated his remaining forces around the capital world. 300 ships, all volunteers who chose to maintain their collective connection. Can we break through? Not without massive casualties. But I have an idea. The Emperor's ship is at the center of their formation. If we can reach it and upload the virus directly to their core network, the entire remaining empire falls at once, Daeho finished. But that would mean flying through their entire fleet. A suicide mission, Taejun said grimly. Not if we do it right, Daeho replied, studying the tactical display. He thought about the battles his ancestors had fought on Earth, when small forces had defeated massive armies through courage and clever strategy. We need a distraction, something big enough to draw their attention away from their center. The plan they developed was audacious even by their standards. The Allied fleet would attack the Veltharian formation from multiple directions, forcing them to split their defenses. Meanwhile, the Soul's Vengeance and a small strike force would use the chaos to penetrate to the Emperor's ship. All ships. This is Captain Kim, Daeho broadcast to the Allied fleet. Today we end an empire that has brought suffering to 1,000 worlds. Some of you will not survive this battle, but your sacrifice will free billions of beings who have never known what it means to choose their own destiny. Across the fleet, beings from dozens of different species checked their weapons and said goodbye to friends they might never see again. They were miners and merchants, former slaves and escaped prisoners, united only by their desire for freedom. Begin the attack, Daeho commanded. Space erupted into the largest battle in galactic history. The Allied fleet struck from 6 different directions, their kinetic weapons filling the void between stars. The Veltharian ships responded with perfect coordination, their energy beams carving through space like swords of light. Ships died on, both sides exploding in brief stars that lit up the darkness. The Soul's Vengeance led its small strike force through the chaos, dodging between larger vessels as they fought their way toward the center of the enemy formation. Hull breach on Deck 3, Boram reported as a near miss, superheated their armor, sealing off the section. They were taking damage, but so was everyone else. Around them, converted mining ships traded fire with Veltharian dreadnoughts, using swarm tactics to overwhelm individual enemies. It was bloody and desperate, but it was working. There, Taejun pointed at the tactical display. The Emperor's ship. It was massive even by Veltharian standards, a living symbol of the Empire's power. Energy shields surrounded it like a glowing cocoon, and its weapons could destroy capital ships with single shots. How do we get through those defenses? Min Ho asked. The mining engineer had become their specialist in improvised weapons, but even he looked daunted by the task. We don't go through them, Daeho said. We go around them. He had noticed something about the Veltharian formation. Their ships were positioned to defend against external attacks, but the area directly above and below their formation was less protected. It was a blind spot that individual commanders might have covered, but the collective mind thought in patterns. All power to engines, he ordered. We're going up and over. The Soul's Vengeance broke away from the main battle, climbing above, the plane of combat where most ships operated. It was dangerous. They were exposed to fire from below, but it was their only chance. Energy beams reached up to swat them like an annoying insect, but Boram's flying skills kept them just ahead of destruction. They crested the top of the enemy formation and dove down toward the Emperor's ship like a hawk hunting prey. Defensive fire increasing, Taejun reported. They've noticed us. Good, Daeho replied. That means we're close. The Emperor's ship grew larger as they approached, its hull covered in weapons and sensors. But Daeho had studied Veltharian ship design for months. He knew where the weak points were. Target their shield generators, he commanded. All remaining kinetic rounds. Tungsten rods slammed into the massive vessel's hull, seeking the specific points where shield projectors connected to the main power grid. One by one, sections of the energy barrier flickered and failed. Breach in their aft shield grid, Taejun announced. We can get through there. But as they approached the opening, the Emperor's ship turned its main weapons toward them. Energy powerful enough to crack planets began charging in the vessel's primary gun. "They're going to fire," Heejin warned. "Impact in 10 seconds. "Ram them," Daeho decided. "Full power to forward shields and ram them." His crew stared at him in shock. Ramming a ship that size would destroy them both. "Sir, we'll all die," Sang-woo protested. "Maybe," Daeho agreed. "But if we don't stop them, billions more will die under their rule. Sometimes that's what leadership means, making the hard choices." Bo-ram's hands moved over her controls without hesitation. "Ramming speed, Captain. It's been an honor serving with you." The Soul's Vengeance accelerated toward the Emperor's ship, its small hull glowing from the heat of atmospheric friction. Behind them, the Allied fleet continued its desperate battle, buying them precious seconds with their lives. At the last moment, something unexpected happened. A Veltharian ship, one of Kale's vessels, moved between them and the Emperor's weapon. The energy beam meant for the Soul's Vengeance instead struck the friendly ship, destroying it instantly. "Kyle!" Hyejin screamed, but there was no response. The former admiral had sacrificed himself to give them their chance. The Soul's Vengeance struck the Emperor's ship like a missile, punching through armor plating and deep into the vessel's interior. Emergency lights flickered as both ships shuddered from the impact. "Hull integrity at 30%, Bo-ram reported, blood running from a cut on her forehead. "But we're through." "Deploy the virus," Daeho commanded. Hyejin activated their special payload, uploading the enhanced virus directly into the Emperor's ship network. From there, it would spread to every connected Veltharian in the galaxy, severing mental links that had existed for thousands of years. "Upload complete," she announced. "The virus is spreading through their network now." Around them, the battle began to change. Veltharian ships started losing coordination as their crews experienced individual consciousness for the first time. Some vessels stopped firing entirely as their operators struggled to understand what was happening to them. Emperor Vex himself appeared on their communication screen, his ancient face twisted with rage and despair. "What have you done to us? What have you done?"